You see, one of the most curious discoveries you can ever make is that you were never really asleep. You only imagined you were. All your seeking, all your striving to wake up has been a magnificent dream of searching, and suddenly you begin to laugh because you realize there was never anywhere to go. The idea that you must attain enlightenment is itself the greatest joke the universe ever told, because the very one trying to wake up is the dream. The seeker and the sought are the same mist twisting in circles, pretending to chase itself. We've been taught since childhood that we are separate beings, dropped into this world, little egos, in skins of their own, trying to become something better, something more real. And so we join the great race. Self-improvement, moral achievement, spiritual progress, climbing some invisible ladder toward God. Yet all the while, the ladder is standing on the same ground we started from. To awaken, in truth, is not to add something new. It is to see that nothing was ever missing. The eyes with which you are searching for the divine are the same eyes through which the divine is already looking. The game was rigged beautifully from the start. Now, many people hear this and become terribly confused. They say, but surely, if I'm already awake, why do I feel so lost? But that's part of the play. You see, feeling lost is one of the ways the universe finds itself. The wave that forgets it is the ocean must curl and crash until it remembers the sea it came from. This is the great cosmic hide and seek. Spirit hides itself in form, loses itself in thought, in busyness, in seriousness, only to rediscover itself through the exquisite shock of remembering. You were never asleep. You were pretending to be someone who could be. And when that pretending begins to crumble, when the chase exhausts itself, something miraculous happens. There's a stillness. The search slows. The tension drops away. You begin to sense that all your efforts to awaken were like stirring water to make it clear. The clarity was there all along, waiting for you to stop stirring. You realize that life doesn't need your permission to be divine. The sun doesn't ask the flower to bloom. It simply shines. And in the same effortless way, consciousness has been shining through you, through your laughter, your mistakes, your boredom, your longing, all of it part of the same radiant performance. And so, the moment you stop trying to wake up, you do. Because the awakening was never a future event. It was the timeless recognition that you and reality were never two. This is the strange, beautiful realization that the one who sought awakening dissolves into the one who was awake all along. The dreamer wakes up only to discover that the dream itself was awake the whole time. You see, one of the first things that happens when you begin to awaken is not that you become wiser or holier, no. It's that you lose your taste for drama. The grand theater of emotional turbulence, the endless arguing, the sacred seriousness of human affairs all begin to taste like yesterday's tea. You find yourself sitting in the same conversations you've always had, but now something inside of you is watching rather than participating. People speak of outrage, of worry, of triumph and defeat, and you notice that it all feels strangely thin, as though everyone has agreed to pretend the stage is real and the costumes are who they are. When you were asleep, this seemed perfectly normal. You played your part beautifully. You believed in your character, your motives, your destiny. You defended your opinions as though they were your children. But now, the lines no longer fit. The words sound hollow in your own mouth. And you begin to wonder, was I ever really that person? It's not that you become detached or cold, not at all. It's that you begin to see through the performance. You notice that most quarrels are just mirrors arguing with themselves. You see that the person shouting across the table and the one sitting inside your skin are waves of the same sea, splashing about and calling it disagreement. And because you see this, you no longer have the energy to keep pretending. You stop rehearsing old grievances, stop auditioning for approval. You no longer feel compelled to fix or fight every story that passes by. You let them drift not out of apathy, but out of understanding. For you realize that drama depends on identification. The play only feels real when the actor forgets he's on stage. And once you remember that the curtain will fall and rise again, oh, a marvelous peace begins to settle in. The tragedies become comedies. The villains become mirrors. And even your own sorrows begin to shimmer with a kind of grace. This is not a withdrawal from life. It's a deep participation. Because only when you stop clinging to the noise can you truly hear the music beneath it. And so the awakened person grows quiet, not silent because of shyness, but silent because words are too small for what they now know. They stop arguing not because they have nothing to say, but because they finally see that everyone is right from their own point of view. They stop chasing because there is nowhere to go. They stop defending because there is nothing left to defend. You could say they vanish, but really, they just dissolve into clarity. The world continues, its dance nations quarrel, lovers separate, markets rise and fall, but the awakened one sits quietly, sipping tea, smiling at the great unfolding. Not above it, not beyond it, but through it, seeing the perfection in its imperfection, the stillness within its storm. And that is how the drama fades, not with rebellion, not with effort, but with a simple seeing that the game was never serious to begin with. Another strange thing begins to happen when the veil of sleep lifts. You notice that the past and the future, those grand, heavy illusions we've worshipped for centuries, begin to crumble like old paper in the rain. Time, which once felt so solid, so linear, begins to wobble. You see, while you were asleep, life seemed to be a long road stretching out before you. There was always a destination somewhere ahead, something to reach, something to fix, someone to become. We were all pilgrims on the highway of someday. But awakening whispers a very different truth. There is no road, and there never was. There is only now. The past, you begin to realize, is nothing more than memory. And memory, like a photograph, captures only the shadow of what once danced in light. It is not alive. And the future, that glittering projection we chase so desperately, is nothing but imagination, a mirage shimmering on the horizon of thought. The mind lives in these two dimensions, what was and what might be, constantly skipping between them like a faulty record. And yet, existence itself knows nothing of either. The tree does not remember last spring. The ocean does not plan its next wave. Only the human mind, that anxious storyteller, insists on stitching eternity into a timeline. But when you awaken, the thread snaps. You suddenly see that the present moment, this eternal, breathing instant, is all there has ever been. Every moment of your past happened in this now. Every event in your future will unfold in this now. The river of time does not flow from yesterday to tomorrow. It springs eternally from the timeless source that you are. And what a relief it is. The endless pressure of becoming melts away. You no longer need to race toward perfection or flee from mistakes, because neither of those places exists. There is only the dance happening now, the single, infinite note of being that has been singing since before you were born and will continue long after you've forgotten your name. You start to laugh at how absurdly simple it is. How all your anxiety was built upon ghosts, the ghost of what has already vanished and the ghost of what will never arrive. You realize that the mind's obsession with time was its way of avoiding the stillness of presence. And so, time dissolves not on the clock, but in your perception. The tick and the tock continue, but their authority fades. You stop living as a prisoner of deadlines and become a witness of eternity. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You see that every sound, every color, every movement is the universe introducing itself again and again, endlessly new, endlessly now. And when you understand this, you stop trying to live in the present because you see that you could never leave it. You have always been here, forever arriving, forever complete. So the past and the future collapse, And in their place, you find something far more mysterious, the eternal moment that has been quietly holding you all along. When the mind begins to quiet, another marvelous thing unfolds. Compassion arises, but not the kind you were taught, not the strained, moralistic effort to be a good person. This compassion comes uninvited, like a breeze through an open window. It does not ask permission to enter. It simply flows. You see, before awakening, we often mistake pity for love. We see another person in pain and rush in to fix them, to pull them toward what we think is light. We believe we know what they need, but underneath, there's usually a subtle arrogance, the rescuer playing savior to the rescued. And so we perpetuate the illusion that one of us is higher, wiser, better. Yet awakening reveals something astonishing. There are no victims and no rescuers. There are only different expressions of the same consciousness, each playing its part in this cosmic drama of remembering. One plays the saint, another the sinner, one the teacher, another the fool, but all are movements of the same divine current. So when you awaken, you begin to see suffering instead of merely reacting to it. You feel the ache of the world in your own chest, but you also perceive the sacred intelligence pulsing within it. You realize that suffering is not punishment, nor accident. It is the pressure through which awareness grows. Just as the pearl forms through irritation, consciousness polishes itself through pain. And this understanding changes how you love. You no longer rush to drag someone out of their darkness. You sit beside them in it. You no longer preach solutions, you offer presence, because you know that the moment they are ready to rise, they will, and your stillness will be the rope they reach for. This is compassion without rescue. It is not indifference. It is the highest form of love. It allows everything to be as it is, because it knows that everything is already on its way home. When you love this way, you do not burn out, because you are not giving energy from yourself, you are letting the universe love through you. The heart opens without effort. Even the most broken people no longer repel you, because you see the same light flickering behind their confusion that once flickered behind your own. You realize that to love someone does not mean to rearrange their story. It means to recognize the storyteller behind it. You stop praying for people to change and begin to see that in the vastness of eternity, they are already whole. And so, compassion becomes quiet. It smiles instead of shouts. It listens instead of demands. It offers its hand, but never pulls. It trusts the timing of the soul. When you no longer need to save anyone, you finally begin to love everyone freely, fearlessly, without condition. At a certain point in this great unfolding, you begin to laugh, not out of mockery, not out of cynicism, but out of recognition. You laugh because you suddenly see that the entire affair, this whole business of life, is utterly absurd, and yet gloriously so. You laugh because you realize that you spent years, perhaps lifetimes, trying to take seriously something that was never serious to begin with. You worried about success and failure, about sin and salvation, about what others might think of you, and then you discover that the universe has no opinion. It is simply playing. You see, existence is not a courtroom. It's a playground. It's hide and seek on a cosmic scale. God hides himself as you, pretending to be lost, pretending to be searching. And the moment you find him, he bursts out laughing, saying, "Ah, you caught me again." This is why, when people awaken, there is often laughter, not the nervous laughter of confusion, but the belly-deep laughter of release, the kind of laughter that breaks every chain in an instant. You laugh at yourself, at your seriousness, at your spiritual ambitions. You laugh at the grand idea that you, a tiny fragment of eternity, could have ever been in control of anything at all. And this laughter, you see, is holy. Because humor is a crack in the armor of the ego. It is the divine light sneaking through the seriousness of self-importance. The moment you can laugh at yourself, you are no longer trapped by yourself. The cage door vanishes. This is why enlightened people often seem mischievous. They tease. They play. They speak in riddles. Not because they are hiding wisdom, but because they know wisdom cannot survive in rigid form. It must dance, it must sing, it must smile. To see the humor of existence is to see that the Creator is not a judge, but a jester, not condemning his creation, but delighting in it. Every failure, every heartbreak, every foolish mistake becomes part of the great cosmic comedy, where nothing is wasted and every act is applause for the divine performance. And perhaps the greatest joke of all is that the one who is laughing and the one being laughed at are the same. The universe tickling itself through 1,000 different faces. When you see this, the weight of existence lifts. You don't need to fix it, or improve it, or even understand it. You just have to laugh with it, because you realize the laughter itself is awakening. After the laughter subsides, something subtler begins to happen. The edges of who you think you are start to soften. The identity you've spent so many years polishing, your name, your story, your personality, your resume of triumphs and tragedies, all begin to melt like wax in the sun. At first, it can feel strange. You might sense a quiet fear, a whisper saying, "If I let this go, who will I be?" But look closely, that voice is the very illusion you're waking from. It is the actor terrified of losing the mask, unaware that beneath it lies not emptiness, but freedom. You see, identity is useful, but it was never real. It's a role in a play, a temporary costume the universe slips into to experience a particular flavor of itself. For a while, you were a banker, a mother, a poet, a skeptic, a seeker. But these are verbs masquerading as nouns. They are things the cosmos is doing, not who you truly are. When awakening deepens, you begin to feel yourself less as a person and more as a process, a shimmering movement of energy, a wave on the vast ocean of consciousness. You realize that what you call I is merely a point where the universe looks at itself and says, "Ah, here I am." And that recognition dissolves the tightness around your life. You no longer have to defend an image, because you see that there is no fixed self to defend. You can laugh at your mistakes, forgive your contradictions, because they are all ripples on the same water. Now, this does not mean you disappear from the world. Quite the opposite. You begin to live more fully because you're no longer afraid of being anyone in particular. The mask becomes transparent, and through it, the light of what you truly are shines without obstruction. You see, the ego isn't destroyed in awakening, it's recontextualized. It becomes what it always was, a beautifully crafted instrument, not the musician. The wave keeps dancing, but now it knows the ocean is behind it. And because of that, the dance becomes effortless. So the question, "Who am I?" changes. It's no longer a riddle to solve, but a song to sing. The answer becomes obvious and impossible at once. I am what is looking. And when you feel that directly, when you sense that your thoughts, your body, your history are clouds drifting through the vast sky of awareness, a tremendous peace arises. Because how can the sky be harmed by a passing storm? In that peace, identity melts, and only being remains. Not the being of a person, but the being of the whole, infinite, timeless, without name. And you realize, with a gentle smile, that you were never the mask at all. You were the face behind every face. Now, as this awakening deepens, you may begin to notice something extraordinary. The body itself begins to wake up. The very flesh that once seemed heavy, mechanical, and separate suddenly feels alive with awareness. You realize that consciousness was never something trapped inside the body, it is the body. The same intelligence that spins galaxies is humming quietly in your heartbeat. For so long, you thought of yourself as a ghost inhabiting a machine, a driver behind the eyes. But look closer. There is no one in there. There is only the dance of sensation, the pulsing, breathing, feeling miracle of being alive. What you called my body is actually the entire cosmos expressing itself in miniature, a galaxy of cells, a constellation of atoms, a living poem written in bone and breath. You begin to feel it, the aliveness under your skin, the subtle vibration in your hands, the way the air touches you from within as much as without. You realize that you've never truly felt your body before because you were always trying to use it to make it beautiful, strong, disciplined, spiritual. And now, for the first time, you simply listen. And when you listen, you discover that the body has always been speaking. Every ache, every tremor, every sigh was a whisper from consciousness, saying, I am here. You were not a soul in a shell. You were a soul in motion, a field of awareness in constant communication with itself. This realization changes everything. Eating becomes a meditation, walking becomes prayer, breathing becomes the holiest mantra. You begin to move, not as a person moving a body, but as movement itself. You feel the great current of life flowing through you, not metaphorically, but palpably. The boundaries between you and the world blur. You no longer walk through nature, you walk as nature. And perhaps you notice something subtler still. The more you rest in awareness, the more sensitive the body becomes. Loud environments, false words, artificial emotions all begin to feel like static against your skin. The body no longer tolerates unconsciousness. It aches for alignment, for authenticity, for silence. You see, the awakened body is not separate from the awakened mind. They are the same awareness, vibrating at different speeds. Thought is the body, speaking softly. Sensation is thought, made tangible. And both dissolve back into the same field of presence. So awakening is not escape from the body, it is the body remembering what it truly is. Spirit made touchable. God in form, dancing as heartbeat, as breath, as the quiet hum beneath your ribs. You no longer say, I have a body. You say, I am this living miracle. And in that shift, heaven is no longer a place you travel to. It becomes the skin you're already wearing. There comes a time, after the laughter and the melting and the awakening of the body, when you begin to drift away from the noise of the crowd. Not because you despise it, no, not at all, but because its rhythm no longer matches your own. The music you once danced to has changed tempo. The drumbeat of ambition, competition, and performance no longer moves your feet. You start to notice that most of what people call life is actually theater. Endless conversations about who's right, who's wrong, who's winning, who's losing, people trading opinions as if they were currencies, defending identities as if they were kingdoms. And you realize, with a kind of tender sadness, that much of this activity is an attempt to avoid silence. For silence, to the sleeping mind, feels like death, but to the awakened one, silence feels like home. So you find yourself withdrawing, not dramatically, but gently, quietly, like a tide going out. The parties feel hollow, the gossip unbearable, the news absurd. You no longer crave the noise of belonging. You crave the purity of being. And yet, this is not isolation. It is intimacy of a different kind. You begin to sense connection, not through words, but through presence. Not through agreement, but through awareness. You can sit beside a tree and feel understood. You can walk through a crowded street and feel as though the whole city is breathing with you. And though you appear alone, you are never lonely, because now you see that every being is another face of your own infinite self. Still, there is a strange tension in this detachment. You see the games people play, the arguments, the posturing, the endless pursuit of significance, and part of you longs to shake them awake, to say, "Can't you see? You're dreaming." But then you remember, you were once dreaming too, and no one could wake you before you were ready. So you smile, and you let them be. You play along when needed, you bow to the theater, but you no longer mistake the stage for reality. You might speak when the moment calls, or fall silent when words would only add to the noise. Either way, you remain free. It is not that you reject society. It's that you no longer fear being outside of it. You can move through the collective dream like a lucid dreamer, aware that it's all imagination, and yet participating with joy. Buying your groceries, paying your bills, saying good morning, all of it still happens, but now it feels lighter, almost transparent. And if someone asks you why you seem so calm, so different, you may struggle to explain. Because how do you tell someone that the world they take so seriously has become, to you, a play of light and shadow? You can only smile and hope they see the reflection in your eyes. This detachment, you see, is not coldness. It's love in its highest form, love without clinging. You love the world enough to let it dream, to let it stumble, to let it grow. You no longer need to fix the illusion, because you see that even the illusion is sacred. So, you step back from the crowd's dream, not in rebellion, but in reverence. You let the tide of humanity swirl and crash as it must, and you rest on the shore of awareness, watching it all, the madness, the beauty, the tragedy, the comedy, and you whisper softly, "Ah, what a magnificent dream this is." As you drift more deeply into this new clarity, something subtle begins to happen. Life starts to feel responsive. Events that once seemed random begin to weave together with an intelligence that defies logic. You think of someone, and they call. You wonder about a question, and the answer appears in a book left open on a cafe table. You hesitate at a crossroads, and a song on the radio says exactly what you needed to hear. Now, the sleeping mind calls these things coincidences. The awakened mind simply smiles and says, "Ah, so that's how the universe speaks." Because you see, reality is not a dead machine made of matter and motion. It is a living field of awareness. And you are not in it, you are it. What you once called the outer world and your inner thoughts are two sides of the same wave, rippling in perfect harmony. Every encounter, every delay, every detour is part of a choreography so vast and so precise that no intellect could ever design it. When you awaken, you begin to sense this dance, not as prediction, not as superstition, but as recognition. You feel that everything is meeting you exactly where you are, as if the world were gently conspiring for your growth. And the more you trust this, the clearer it becomes. You stop trying to force outcomes. You stop demanding explanations. You let go of the steering wheel and realize the road itself is alive. Life begins to carry you as effortlessly as the tide carries a leaf. But here's the secret. The moment you try to prove it, it slips away. The mind wants to make a system out of mystery, to chart the flow of grace on a whiteboard. Yet the very act of measurement kills the magic. The cosmic wink only appears to those who aren't staring too hard. So you learn to live in a quiet dialogue with existence, not expecting, but listening. You begin to move through the world like a musician improvising with a band too vast to see. A feather falls at your feet, you smile. A door closes, you bow. A stranger offers kindness, you recognize yourself in their eyes. It's not that life suddenly becomes easy. It becomes meaningful. You realize that every twist and turn was guidance, every heartbreak a signpost, every coincidence a whispered reminder that consciousness never lost track of itself. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is this teaching me?" And slowly, gently, the universe becomes your companion, not a puzzle to solve, but a beloved to dance with. In this intimacy with existence, even silence feels like conversation, and you begin to trust deeply, instinctively, that you are exactly where you need to be, always have been, and always will be. And then, my friends, comes the quiet explosion, the discovery that all along what you have been searching for is not wisdom, not truth, not enlightenment, but love. Not love as emotion, not love as romance, not love as kindness or moral duty, but love as the very essence of awareness itself. You begin to feel that everything, absolutely everything, is made of love. Not sentimental affection, but the pure recognition that there is no separation. The flower and the bee, the wave and the shore, the birth and the death, all are movements of one infinite pulse. Love is what happens when the illusion of two collapses back into one. You see, most of our human love is conditional. We say, "I love you if," "I love you when," always an exchange, a contract, a balance of comfort and fear. But this deeper love arises when there is no you and I left to bargain. It is not something you do, it is what you are. It radiates effortlessly, like warmth from the sun. In that love, the universe becomes impossibly intimate. You touch a leaf, and it touches you back. You look at the stars, and you sense them looking through you. The boundary between observer and observed dissolves awareness, folds into itself like two mirrors, reflecting infinity. And here lies the great paradox. Love, in its truest form, is both utterly personal and entirely impersonal. It cherishes every grain of sand while belonging to none of them. You realize that love doesn't choose sides because love is both sides. It does not cling. It does not fear loss, for it knows nothing can ever be lost when all is itself. This is why the awakened one walks through the world with such gentleness. Their love is not a strategy, it is a presence. They may speak softly, or not at all. They may pass unnoticed, like a breeze in summer. But wherever they go, the air seems to clear, the noise seems to quiet, because love does not announce itself, it simply is. And this, you see, is the fulfillment of the journey. Not to become enlightened, not to attain spiritual status, but to dissolve so completely that only love remains. To realize that awareness itself, the silent witness behind all experience, is already loving everything it perceives, for it is that which it perceives. You look into the eyes of another and understand that there was never another. There was only this endless seeing, loving, being, playing both roles, for the sheer delight of meeting itself. You laugh, you cry, you bow, because what else can you do in the presence of such unbearable beauty? And when at last you rest in this understanding, you see that love does not need to be practiced, cultivated, or protected. It only needs to be recognized. It was never missing. It was only hidden beneath the illusion that you were separate from the whole. So when the mind quiets, when the roles fall away, when even the idea of awakening dissolves, what remains is this: a love without object, a joy without reason, a peace that has no opposite. And you realize this is what the universe has been whispering all along. You are not in love with life. You are life, loving itself. And so, having seen all of this, the fading of drama, the collapse of time, the laughter, the melting, the awakening of the body, the quiet withdrawal, the synchronicities, and finally, the realization that love is the fabric of it all, something very ordinary happens. You return. not as the person who left, but as something softer, wider, freer. You return to the marketplace, to the kitchen sink, to your inbox and your family, and the ordinary rhythm of breathing and being human. But now, everything has changed, and yet nothing has changed. You see, awakening is not an escape from life. It is life seeing itself clearly. The great illusion of enlightenment is that it's a destination, an achievement. But the real miracle is how seamlessly it fits into the simplest things. Making tea, feeding a child, walking to work, all of it becomes lit from within. The border dweller lives exactly here between the dreaming world and the awakened one. They can play both games without being trapped by either. They can speak the language of society while knowing the silence beneath it. They can act in the play, but they never forget it's a play. This is not withdrawal, and it is not missionary zeal. It is participation with awareness. It is the return of the wave to the ocean, and the ocean remembering itself as the wave. You pay your bills, you answer the phone, you laugh with friends, and all the while, you know that it is consciousness playing with itself, dressing up as you. This makes living unspeakably gentle. You no longer demand perfection from yourself or from others, because you see that everyone is exactly where they must be in their own unfolding. You meet the angry, the fearful, the confused, and you recognize the ancient rhythm of awakening still pulsing within them. You bow inwardly, even as they scowl. You see the Buddha behind every mask, the divine rehearsing its lines, and you continue, quietly, not as a teacher, not as a savior, but as a presence, a living reminder that peace does not mean absence of noise, but awareness within it. You can hold a conversation about the weather and still feel eternity in the sound of the rain. You can sit in traffic and feel the stillness behind the motion. You can stand in a crowd and feel the heartbeat of one life moving through 1,000 bodies. That is what it means to live awake, not to leave the dream, but to dream knowingly. To walk through the illusion as an artist, not a prisoner. To let the world be just as it is, because you see it for what it is. A game of divine hide and seek, a leela, a cosmic laugh. And so, the border dweller lives lightly, rooted in stillness, yet flowing through change. They carry no flag, no ideology, no need to convert. Their very being is the teaching wordless, effortless, unassuming. Eventually, even the idea of awakening fades. The distinction between awake and asleep dissolves, for there is only the dance. The play continues, the seasons turn, the tides shift, and consciousness keeps pretending to forget, only to remember again. And in this remembering, there is infinite compassion because, you see, you never truly left home. You were never separate from the source. The border itself was an illusion, a mirage between two sides of the same infinite expanse. So you live simply, silently, joyfully, as the meeting point of heaven and earth, of dream and awareness, of human and divine. You become the threshold itself. And perhaps as you walk through your ordinary day, watching sunlight ripple through leaves, hearing laughter drift across a street, feeling your own breath rising and falling, a smile will touch your face, because somewhere deep inside, you'll hear that ancient whisper once more. This is it. This has always been it. You were never lost, only playing. And in that moment, you'll understand what all awakening was for. Not to escape the world, but to fall completely, lovingly, consciously into it.